Chapter 456. The experiment fails. The funnel's volume and rotation speed were also increasingly continuously along with its soul power. Its gravitational force became stronger as it became larger, and even the stones and sand around it were being pulled in its direction. However, it was immediately ground to dust by the powerful soul power. The space around the tiny funnel slowly began to contort even more. Its volume was still increasing as it spun, but its rotation seemed a little irregular, while the funnel itself was no longer stable. It was trembling faintly. I'm losing control. An ominous feeling surfaced in Huo Yuao's heart as he pounced behind a small hill on the side. Boom, boom, boom. Intense explosions could be heard as a vigorous airflow rushed over his head. The sound waves were deafening as intense soul power undulations erupted in all directions. However, everything settled down very quickly. Huo Yuao looked up at where the funnel was before, and he could see an enormous crater that was 30 meters in diameter and more than 10 meters deep. A hurricane seemed to have swept over the large crater, and he could see many marks like blade cuts around it. Huo Yuao, even with his full strength, couldn't do any better. However, he didn't even use 10% of his soul power. High-speed rotation and compression were undoubtedly the reasons why the tiny funnel had become so strong. However, the funnel became very unstable when he lost control of it. There were clear spatial undulations and contortions around the funnel. However, there was a clear gap between that and the beast god's black holes. That was probably because he didn't have enough soul power. It was no wonder the beast god was so formidable. He had stored so much soul power in that state in his body. It would be a surprise if he wasn't that frighteningly powerful. Huo Yuao understood that controlling such power was far too difficult with his current strength. However, understanding and experiencing the principles concerning this was very beneficial for his future cultivation, so that he didn't take any long roads. He decided to stop experimenting because he wasn't sure whether he could distance himself from the pull of the funnel using instant teleportation if the funnel became stronger than before. What would happen if he couldn't? That meant he could only detonate it prematurely. Otherwise, the ultimate result would be that his soul power would be sucked dry, or perhaps the funnel would swallow everything. The funnel would increase to an even more frightening state before a tremendous explosion would be triggered. Huo Yuao had already observed and learned a lot today. As for his next experiment, he felt that it would be a lot safer if he attempted it after he had returned to the academy. Huo Yuao rushed back to the army camp. The explosion from before was quite loud, but the army camp was ultimately relatively far away, while he had also chosen a valley in the mountains. That was the reason why nothing much happened in the army camp. He silently snuck back to his own tent, but was startled when he lifted his curtain because there was actually someone else in his tent. Tang Wutong was frowning as she stood in the center of the tent and asked as he walked in, "Where did you go?" Huo Yuao hesitated momentarily as he stammered, "I went to the toilet." Tang Wutong retorted angrily, "Do you need to spend 1 hour on the toilet? I have constipation." Huo Yuao answered feebly, "You." Tang Wutong grunted furiously as she turned to leave. "Hey, how did you know I wasn't in my tent?" Huo Yuao asked subconsciously. Tang Wutong had already stopped to the entrance of his tent. She paused and replied, "I was afraid that something would happen to you, so I decided to visit you tonight, and discovered that you weren't here anymore." "Where did you go?" Huo Yuao could tell that her voice was softening, and Donga's beautiful face surfaced in his mind once more. His heart softened as he spoke the truth. "I went to experiment with the method of controlling soul power. It wasn't very convenient to do it inside the army camp, so I decided to go outside." Tang Wutong turned around and stared at him in shock. "Your body is already like that. Why are you still doing experiments? What if something happened? Couldn't you have just waited for 2 more days?" All right, I made a mistake." Huo Yuao admitted his mistake conscientiously. Tang Wutong grunted and said, "Sleep early. Good night," and she walked away after that. Huo Yuao was in a little bit of a daze as he watched her departing profile. Her attitude towards me seems a little better than before. Unfortunately, she's not Donga. How fantastic would everything have been if she were Donga? Huo Yuao lamented in his mind as he sat back on his bed and quietly recalled every detail of his experiment. 2 days quickly passed as Huo Yuao's body gradually recovered. Positive news came back from the front lines. The Sun Moon Empire's internal territories were indeed empty, while the White Tiger Duke's war strategy was extremely successful. The Soul Master legions that had dispersed into the Sun Moon Empire's territories were wreaking havoc everywhere, and they caused great damage to the Sun Moon Empire. The Douluo Empire had more Soul Masters than the number of Soul Engineers that the Sun Moon Empire had brought back, and this disparity was even wider in terms of the number of powerful individuals. The Sun Moon Empire was badly bruised and battered as the Douluo Empire overran several of their cities. However, the White Tiger Duke governed his army very strictly. Normal citizens were not to be harmed after the city had fallen, and their armies would pull out of the city after looting and pillaging the governing bodies' granaries and armories. Conquering cities wasn't the aim of their battle strategy, and wreaking excessive destruction wasn't within the White Tiger Duke's personality either. Pillaging resources was a lot more effective. Furthermore, doing so could also replenish the Douluo Empire's own expenses. Everyone who participated in the strategy were Soul Masters, and many of them had storage soul tools. Pillaging was like a gentle breeze for them. Quickly, the Sun Moon Empire's eastern borders were in a state of emergency, even though their intel was shut off and they didn't know about the Sun Moon Empire's response, or about the Heavenly Soul Empire's situation. The Douluo Empire's operations would undoubtedly relieve the situation. The White Tiger Duke sent letters back several times to inquire about Huo Yuao's physical state. After he made sure that Huo Yuao was fine, he even personally wrote a commendation for Huo Yuao for his contributions to the Douluo Empire. The title of Marquis had also been conferred to Huo Yuao. Shu Sanchi and the others rested and got ready for another day, and they made sure Huo Yuao had recovered completely before he wrote a letter to the White Tiger Duke to bid their farewells. All 8 of them then departed the Douluo Empire's army camp and journeyed back towards Shrek Academy. Both the White Tiger Duke and Princess Juju didn't want them to leave. However, the war situation at the front lines was of the utmost priority, so they couldn't take time out to attempt to keep the 8 of them here. Furthermore, they understood that these people from Shrek Academy couldn't be kept. Fortunately, both parties had established an amiable relationship after their missions, especially so after Huo Yuao accepted his title of Marquis. This undoubtedly meant that Huo Yuao was admitting he was a Soul Master from the Douluo Empire. Everyone flew through the air. They came as 8, and they returned as 8. Huo Yuao had practically returned from the dead, but everyone managed to return with their lives. However, everyone had experienced the cruelty of war. This was especially so after the top-tier individuals directly participated in the war. The death god Douluo Yushishui never appeared again after she departed. At least, the Douluo Empire had yet to encounter that terrifying ultimate Douluo after they invaded the Sun Moon Empire. But no matter what, this ultimate Douluo was like an enormous shadow that loomed over the Douluo Empire's head. Her appearance would lead to rivers of blood. The situation had descended into complete chaos. The 8 of them were returning to the academy to protect it, and that was what they absolutely had to do. Even though their individual strengths weren't much for Shrek Academy as a whole, Huo Yuao's status was special, and his presence could even allow Shrek Academy to link up with the Great Stardo Forest Soul Beasts for aid. If that was the case, Shrek Academy would be able to hold their own against the Sun Moon Empire if it was invaded. They maintained a strict formation as they flew through the air. Huo Yuao flew in the center, but his eyes were a little lackadaisical. More accurately put, he had been in this state for the past few days. Whether he was walking, sitting, flying, or perhaps even eating, he would have a dazed and listless demeanor. His companions were a little worried about him, but he would always say that he was just contemplating some things when they asked. The truth was, he wasn't lying. He was contemplating some things that were extremely important to him. That tiny funnel that he was experimenting with was naturally the most important item amongst those things. Huo Yuao had officially concluded his experiments results after his last experiment. Even though he didn't manage to create a black hole like DT and soul power in the end, the entire experimental process allowed him to discover and complete things that he had never known about. For instance, soul power would generate tremendous gravitational force once it was compressed into a solid state, and its absorption of external soul power would become stronger. This point was very important for his future cultivation. He was a soul sage, and his soul power had become liquid at this point. His liquid soul power's viscosity would increase as his cultivation increased. Wasn't that distinctly similar to what his soul power was like when he compressed it during the experiment? Furthermore, he had known about this principle a long time ago, that soul masters compressed the soul power inside their body continuously as their soul power increased. Before more soul power would be stored, soul masters' martial souls would naturally become stronger if their martial souls fused with stronger soul power. Elder Mu had told Huo Yuao before that soul masters' soul power would be continuously accumulated and compressed as they became stronger, and only when they became title Douluo would things begin to change. However, Elder Mu didn't tell him much about title Douluo. That wasn't because he forgot about those things. Huo Yuao's cultivation was still very low at that point, and Elder Mu feared that Huo Yuao would attempt to run before he could walk. Huo Yuao recalled what Elder Mu had told him. According to Elder Mu, a Soul Master's soul power would reach the limit of its conversion from liquid to solid as he or she reached the pinnacle of an 8-ringed soul Douluo, which was rank 89, while title Douluo would probably have entirely solid soul power. One of the most prominent characteristics of solid-state soul power was probably the fact that they could leverage the origin energy of heaven and earth in the air better. Huo Yuao had already felt this in his experiment from before. Even if the solid-state soul power didn't absorb the Soul Master's own soul power, it would still continuously absorb the origin energy in the air by itself. The pertinent soul skill strength would therefore increase throughout this process. This experiment was equivalent to opening a door to another world for Huo Yuao, and it allowed him to see stranger things regarding Soul Masters. The first thing he wanted to do when he returned to the academy was to seek out Elder Sun so that he could answer his questions and clear up his confusion. Hey, are you alright? Why are you always in such a daze? Did your injuries this time damage your brain? Tang Wutong was flying beside him, and she couldn't help but ask him that question. This fellow has been like this over the past few days. Everyone is worried about him, but they can't really press him any further for fear of upsetting him. He keeps saying that he's fine, he's alright, but he doesn't seem like he's alright at all. Hey! Huo Yuao was deep in thought, and his thoughts became a little jumbled when he heard Tang Wutong's voice. He frowned a little and said, "Of course I'm fine. I'm just thinking about some things." Tang Wutong rolled her eyes and said, "What do you have to think about? That you have to do that for a few days. It's fine if something is wrong with you. Just treat it as quickly as possible. Don't force yourself." Huo Yuao snapped, "Nothing is wrong with me. I'm perfectly fine. There are some questions that I need to think more about, so don't interrupt my train of thought." With that, he continued flying forward as he began to contemplate once more. This guy. Tang Wutong glared at him, but he didn't respond at all. He doesn't recognize my good intentions at all. Humph. Everyone flew continuously until midday before Shusanchi, who had taken point, suggested for everyone to descend and have a rest. It was quite a coincidence that they descended onto a spot next to a wide river. This enormous river was 100 meters wide, and the flow of the water was very rapid. Even though it wasn't very clear, one would consider the bluish-green river water's clarity to be decent if its volume was taken into account. Huo Yuao, I want to eat grilled fish. This river is so huge. I'm sure there are enough fish here. They must be very fat and juicy. Nan Kyukayo exclaimed joyfully. Ah, grilled fish. Huo Yuao stared at her, and his eyes looked a little blank. Shusanchi smiled and said, "Yes, Yuao, your grilled fish is the best in the world. Give us another taste of it. Everyone will probably get busy once we get back to the academy. You should also stop thinking and rest your mind a little bit. You should switch up your thoughts once in a while no matter what you're contemplating." Huo Yuao couldn't really decline his request as he saw everyone's hopeful eyes. He nodded and went ahead to catch some fish. Tang Wutong secretly swallowed some saliva as she heard that they were eating grilled fish. She could still vividly recall the aromatic fragrance from the last time. Catching fish was like a hot knife on butter for a soul sage. Huo Yuao chose to use the simplest and most brutal method. He froze some of the river's water before he transformed it into icy spheres and detonated them in the water with ice explosion. The vigorous shockwaves flipped a large amount of fish out, and Huo Yuao used controlling crane capturing dragon to pull them onto the shore. The entire process took a little more than 10 seconds, and he proceeded to then process the fish. Yi Guyi and Nan Kyukayo had already gone to collect firewood, while the others helped out in their own way to prepare rations and start a fire. Huo Yuao's movement was extremely quick. His deep thoughts over the past few days were very helpful to him, and he had an increasingly strong feeling that he had found the right path. Therefore, he was eager to continue thinking. The fish were processed after a short while, and a fire had been started. The grilling had begun. Huo Yuao didn't do anything different from the last time. He was still very familiar with the techniques for grilling fish, and grilled fish quickly appeared one after another in his companion's hands for them to enjoy. "Oh, this is good. It's so good," Nan Kyukayo exclaimed elatedly as she ate. Tang Wutong was also eating, but she realized that today's grilled fish seemed a little different from the last time when they were traveling toward the Dalu Empire's northwestern field army. The fish still tasted fresh and delicious, while the fire had been controlled extremely well, but something seemed to be missing. In a more exaggerated sense, the grilled fish seemed to lack spirit. Tang Wutong sat down beside Jiang Nanan. She couldn't help but whisper, "Sister Nanan, do you see any difference between the grilled fish today and the one we had the last time?" Jiang Nanan was momentarily stunned. "Difference? Nope. The fish is very tasty. You don't think it's nice?" Tang Wutong shook her head and replied, "Not that. I just feel like something seems to be missing from the last time." Jiang Nanan was dazed for another moment before a deep look appeared in her eyes. She whispered, "I think you're right. Huo Yuao thought you were Donga when he grilled fish for everyone the last time. He gave voice to the emotions in his inner heart when he was grilling for you. Afterwards, it should be because he realized that you're not Donga, so he has treated you like everyone else." "Eh?" Tang Wutong stared at Jiang Nanan, surprised. She turned her eyes toward the grilled fish in her hands. The fish is missing emotions. It's missing a spirit. Can emotions be infused into a fish? In that case, his feelings for Wang Donga must be very deep. For some reason, envy seemed to develop in her heart as her thoughts stopped here. Everyone was satisfied after eating the grilled fish, and they continued their journey. It was midnight when they returned to Shrek City. Shusanchi and the others went back to the Tang Sect, while Huo Yuao and Tang Wutong went to Shrek Academy. Huo Yuao was the group leader, so he had to report the results of their expedition to Elder Sun. Tang Wutong didn't belong to the Tang Sect, and she was staying in Shrek Academy in the first place. Darkness permeated the skies. Huo Yuao and Tang Wutong weren't flying anymore as they walked toward Shrek Academy, as that was a form of respect for the academy. Shrek City had transformed quite a bit over this period of time. With the full effort of the academy and the Douluo continent's 3 native empires, the new Shrek City's construction speed was one of the fastest in the continent. According to their current speed, they would need 1 more year at most before the Shrek City's overall structure would take shape, and they would need another 3 years after that before the new city would be completely established. Once the new Shrek City was constructed, its scale would rival that of Dalu City and Heaven Do City. It would be second only to the Sun Moon Empire's Radiant City, which was the #1 city on the continent. The academy's main gates were already shut. However, that didn't pose a problem to Huo Yuao or Tang Wutong at all. Huo Yuao didn't want to disturb anyone, so he used imitation before he concealed both Tang Wutong and himself, and they discreetly leapt over the wall. The sea god's lake came into view in the distance. Huo Yuao stopped as he arrived at the lakeside, and Tang Wutong did the same. The night sky was impressive tonight. Moonlight shone across the sea god's lake, and it cast light on the lake's clear ripples and waves. The moonlight was gentle, while all sorts of vegetation stacked on each other by the lakeside. The sea god's island was barely visible in the distance, as if this were a paradise on earth. Huo Yuao began to feel dazed as he saw everything in front of him. He could still clearly remember the time when he had realized that Donga was a girl. Went down Sea God's Lake. The Sea God's fated blind date. Everything that had happened that day left an extremely deep impression in his mind. Idiot. I'm her idiot. I was with her for such a long time, yet I didn't realize she was a girl. That was really stupid of me. He recounted all the sweetness and tenderness he had shared with Donga, and the corner of his mouth curled into a faint smile. He felt as if he could see Donga once more under the moonlight. Donga, have you really been beside me this entire time? But why don't you show yourself to see me? Huo Yuao reached inside as he reminisced, and retrieved the handkerchief that he had treasured this entire time. Tang Wutong was momentarily stunned by the beautiful scenery on Sea God's Lake as she arrived by the lakeside. She was about to return to Sea God's Island, but she immediately realized that Huo Yuao was in a daze once more. Except, this was different from the last time. The way he was dazed from before seemed very muddle-headed, as if he were very deep in thought. However, his eyes were very gentle in this moment, much like the moonlight reflecting off the lake. The corner of his mouth was curled upward, and there was a slight smile on his face. She instantly froze when she saw him reach into his shirt and take out a handkerchief that felt extremely familiar to her. Isn't that my handkerchief? Huo Yuao closed his eyes as he held onto the handkerchief and slowly took a deep breath through his nose. The moist air on the lakeside and the clear and fresh smell of vegetation wafted into his nose, while the handkerchief's crisp aroma that he had yearned for was also part of all those refreshing smells that he was familiar with. He felt as if his heart and mind were both intoxicated as his entire body relaxed. Tang Wutong was just watching him from beside him. She blushed a little. Why is he holding my handkerchief? Does that mean he knows that I was sleeping beside him that night? Huo Yuao opened his eyes as he looked down at the handkerchief in his hands and heaved a faint sigh. Donga, when will you return to my side? Have you really forgotten about me, or do you have some hidden troubles? If you have any problems, why don't you let me face them together with you, bastard? He thinks my handkerchief belongs to her. Tang Wutong was so upset that she started to pout. Huro Yuao was completely immersed in his wonderful memories. Naturally, he wasn't paying attention to Tang Wutong's emotional changes. However, she didn't disturb him and was just standing next to him. This bastard, he's quite concentrated in his love. Tang Wutong couldn't help but recall the first time she had met Huro Yuao. He almost immediately charged at her and embraced her in his arms, and that embrace was burning with passion and filled with emotions. Tang Wutong was overcome with embarrassment at that time, but she felt as if she were about to melt in his arms. She began to feel a little feverish when she recalled that moment. Huro Yuao finally came to from his deep dream after a long while, and he glanced at Tang Wutong with an apologetic look in his eyes. I'm sorry, I phased out. Thank you. Tang Wutong was momentarily stunned. What are you thanking me for? Huro Yuao smiled and said, thank you for not waking me from my dream. It feels great to be home. Let's go. With that, he soared into the sky like a large bird gliding across Sea God's lake. He tapped gently on the surface of the lake, and a small piece of ice formed underneath his feet and supported the weight of his body. He continued gliding forward as he strode across the lake like rolling clouds and flowing water. Tang Wutong followed behind him. She didn't step on those ice pieces but quietly flew behind him instead. Huro Yuao glowed with spirit, health, and vigor when he spoke his thanks to her. She seemed to have seen Huro Yuao in such a state when they left Shrek Academy. Back then, he still thought she was Wang Donga. Now, that Huro Yuao that she recalled seemed to have returned. Tang Wutong wanted to tell Huro Yuao that the handkerchief belonged to her, but she erased that thought from her head when she witnessed the vigor and vitality in his eyes. Even though it was just a small thread of hope, some was better than none. They stepped onto Sea God's island. Huro Yuao went to the Sea God's pavilion, while Tang Wutong returned to her own place. Huro Yuao would be doing the reporting, so she didn't have to follow him. Huro Yuao stood in front of the golden tree and knelt down in front of it before going to the Sea God's pavilion. He respectfully cowed out thrice toward the golden tree. I have returned, teacher. Even though you might find this hard to believe, I did meet Yi Shishui on my expedition. She is now the Sun Moon Empire's death god Douluo, and she is an evil soul master who is also an ultimate Douluo. She is likely to be the continent's first-class 10 soul engineer. Faint golden light rippled from the golden tree, and dense elements of light were clearly visible. These undulations were extremely intense at first before they returned to complete calm. Teacher, did you hear me? Huro Yuao exclaimed joyfully. The golden tree no longer gave him any signs. Faint golden hues radiated gently, and everything seemed to return to tranquility. Elder Mu can't answer you anymore. He released his strength the last time, and his spirit has been damaged. He can only nurture himself inside the golden tree. Yuao, were your words really true? Elder Sun had arrived beside Huro Yuao, and his face was overcome with solemnity. Huro Yuao nodded and got to his feet. He recounted everything that had happened when he faced off against Yi Shishui and everything else that he had heard and seen on his expedition in front of the golden tree. Elder Sun's expression turned even blacker when he heard Huro Yuao's words. He glanced at the golden tree and said, follow me inside. Elder Sun brought Huro Yuao into the Sea God's pavilion. They didn't wait in the main hall, but Elder Sun brought him directly into his own room. Sit down. Elder Sun pointed at a chair inside the room. Huro Yuao walked over to sit down and said apologetically, I apologize for disturbing your rest by coming so late in the night. Elder Sun sighed and said, how can I have the mood to rest? The situation in the continent has suddenly become so deplorable. I never thought that the Sun Moon Empire has hidden such deep secrets. Huro Yuao hurriedly asked, back when I was at the Daluo Empire's front lines, I heard that the Heavenly Soul Empire has lost a lot of territory, and even the Heaven Do City has been lost. What is the situation like now? Elder Sun shook his head and said, the situation is terrible. The Heavenly Soul Empire has already lost 2/3 of their territory to the Sun Moon Empire. The Sun Moon Empire had to task some of their soldiers to handle their conquered territories, and they also had to pacify the Heavenly Soul Empire's citizens. If not for those reasons, the Sun Moon Empire would have conquered every inch of the Heavenly Soul Empire. The Heavenly Soul Empire's remaining soldiers have already rendezvoused with the Daluo Empire and the Doling Empire, and they are holding on to the last of their territories. However, it will be extremely difficult for them to defend it. The Heavenly Soul Empire has already sent messengers to the Academy for aid. The Doling Empire has also started to send their armies into the Heavenly Soul Empire. Huro Yuao wasn't overly surprised, as he had already predicted such a situation. The Doling Empire's thoughts were very simple. They hoped to keep their enemies out of their borders and keep the battle in the Heavenly Soul Empire. That would evidently be more beneficial for them. Therefore, it was natural that they were sending their armies forward. Otherwise, the Doling Empire would end up like the Daluo Empire if the Heavenly Soul Empire was destroyed. They would have to prepare to suffer the Sun Moon Empire's cannon fire at any moment. The Heavenly Soul Empire sending for aid from the Academy was also expected. However, the Heavenly Soul Empire's nation-protecting sect, the Body Sect, couldn't protect them against the Sun Moon Empire's assault. How much stronger could Shrek Academy be than the Body Sect? Shrek Academy would definitely be stronger in terms of overall strength. However, Shrek was an academy, not a sect. The Academy didn't have the same common interests as the Body Sect. The Academy's elders naturally wouldn't be a problem, but the teachers and students didn't have a duty to fight for the Academy. Even if they agreed to, the Academy's high levels would definitely have to consider the safety of these teachers and students, quite unlike the common interests shared within sects. Therefore, Elder Sun had been very hesitant these days about the Heavenly Soul Empire's request for aid, and he hadn't sent out any reinforcements yet. Reinforcements were important, but the question of scale posed a very large problem. If the Heavenly Soul Empire had been completely dominated by the Sun Moon Empire, they would be able to directly threaten Shrek City. There was no question that the Sun Moon Empire would attack Shrek City. In the beginning, Shrek Academy's participation in the war finally allowed the Douluo continent's 3 native empires to beat the Sun Moon Empire back, and the Sun Moon Empire was ultimately defeated. The Sun Moon Empire held up for 1,000 years after that. The Sun Moon Empire had obtained all possible advantages, and they would never let Shrek City go. They had the most advanced technology on the continent, and their assault would likely be even more frightening than the Great Stardo Forest's beast wave back then. Elder Sun, you have to take care of your body. Huro Yuao could clearly see that there were more wrinkles around the corners of Elder Sun's eyes. Elder Sun glanced at him and smiled warmly as he said, to be honest, I'm not very good at being a leader. My life was carefree when Elder Mu was around. I was wanton and unrestrained, and I was very happy from beginning to end. Ever since Elder Mu left, that burden has been shifted onto my shoulders. I finally truly understand the kind of responsibility that Elder Mu had borne for so many years. If only the Sun Moon Empire had delayed their assault for a few decades more. By then, you would have grown to become a man, and I could have passed this mantle to you. Elder Sun smiled, but there was some bitterness in that smile, which was bathed with the vicissitudes of life. Huro Yuao said, Elder Sun, I will work hard to grow up. I am willing to give everything for the Academy. Elder Sun said, now is not the time to give everything you have. If the situation forces our hand in the end and we cannot defend ourselves against the Sun Moon Empire, then you must remember that you must continue to live on. You and the other young men are the hope of the Academy. Do you understand? Huro Yuao felt his heart skip a beat. He could clearly sense some bad omens in Elder Sun's words. Elder Sun said, Yi Shishui is actually still alive. I didn't expect that. Furthermore, she has become the Sun Moon Empire's death god Douluo. With her and Long Xiai are around, unless the Beast God stands directly with us against them, there is no chance that we can defeat them. Furthermore, the Beast God represents the benefit of all soul beasts. With his personality, he is no doubt more than eager to watch humans hurt each other and to see the human elites perish. That is most beneficial for soul beasts. Therefore, even if he did participate, he would wait until both parties have been badly hurt. We can't depend on him at this moment. Huro Yuao said, Elder Sun, can we gather some reclusive sects to come together and fight the Sun Moon Empire? In the end, things will be bad for them if the Sun Moon Empire conquers the Douluo continent's 3 native empires. Elder Sun answered, we are already doing that, and some sects have already responded positively. However, the Sun Moon Empire's soul tool technology is far more advanced than ours. Their prowess in battle sweeps aside everything in their path. I have obtained some detailed battle reports from the Heavenly Soul Empire. The Sun Moon Empire and Heavenly Soul Empire's losses are 1 to 10. Even with the Body Sect's participation in the defense of the Heaven Do City, their losses were still 5 to 1 compared to the Sun Moon Empire. It's hard to say what the war will be like in the future. Fortunately, you helped the Daluo Empire regain the Ningdo mountain range, and you finally held the Sun Moon Empire back for a period of time. Time is increasingly important for us. I have already instructed the Tang Sect to push back all soul tools that are meant to be sold and all purchase requests so that they can focus all their efforts on crafting soul tools to equip Shrek City Defense Army. We can only hope that Shrek City's defense army can turn the tides of battle. Who are you? Could feel fear creeping into his heart. He naturally understood the kind of pressure that Eldest One had to bear to make such a decision. The Douluo Empire and Heavenly Soul Empire both lacked resources, but the Tang Sect's production was very limited. How much effort would they have to put into equip a legion with enough strength to fight against the Sun Moon Empire's Soul Engineer legions? Eldest One, why don't I seek out DTN tomorrow? Eldest One shook his head and said, there's no use. Soul beasts have always only protected their own and not outsiders. DTN can only protect you. He's more than happy to see other humans die. The more the better. Don't waste your time. You should go and rest. You should return to the Tang Sect after resting up for a few days so that you can help the Tang Sect Soul Tool Hall produce Soul Tools more quickly. All of the Academy's resources and the resources that the Douluo continent's 3 native empires have sent to support us have been granted to the Tang Sect. Perhaps the Tang Sect's strength will be key to the final outcome of the war. Yes. Who are you? Acknowledged and stood up. Eldest One said, we will send news from the front lines to the Tang Sect as soon as it comes. You can rest assured as you cultivate and craft soul tools in your sect. You don't have to bother yourself with other things for the moment. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.